everybody. This is Chris and Rick Talk Guitars. That's Chris over there.
How you doing?
And I'm Rick. And today we're going to talk about gear and Muse.
Nice.
Yeah. How we all have gear, guitars, amps, pedals, you name it, juice harps, harmonicas. What else, Chris?
I don't know, saws. Slide whistles.
And we're going to talk about how that relationship, I guess, between people and their gear, and is it inspiring to them? How is it inspiring to them? Does it make you want to write songs? Does it make you want to try to get better at your, particular instrument? Kind of that stuff.
Interesting.
So what do you think, Chris? So first of all, you are a singer-songwriter. Talk about maybe certain pieces of gear you have that really inspire you to write songs or have inspired you to take a different direction in a song or something like that.
Yeah, I used to be way more into songwriting. It was like my thing that I did. And I was like, I got a 4-track in the 90s and I kind of was like my best friend. I just worked that 4-track and got so much music out of that. And I would interact with it daily. And I did have a particular guitar. It was a Guild, Hall mahogany bodied Guild acoustic guitar that was like my songwriting partner. I did for years everything I wrote started on me sitting down with that Guild. And when I first got it, there was a rush of creativity where I wrote like 5-6 songs right away because you're so into it. There's a way it sounds, there's a way it records, and gradually over the years I've kind of gotten away from that. It seems like probably in the last maybe 6 or 7 years, everything I write now is on electric guitar, which is really weird because I get that, it used to be I would use electric guitar as a tool for building out parts of a recording. It's like the song's already written. It's already been written on acoustic guitar. Now I need some, some flavor. So I'll get the electric guitar. Maybe I'll come up with a part. I'll create a part, but the whole song itself was, came about from me interacting with that Guild guitar.
Interesting.
And now, go ahead.
What do you attribute to that change, do you think? Where it was like previously it was all that acoustic that was kind of your starting off point, and now it sounds like it's kind of transitioned to electric.
I was way into acoustic guitar as part of songwriting. I started becoming a songwriter, kind of at the folk level where, you sit with a piece of paper and an acoustic guitar and you write a song. So the process was pretty much ingrained is like, that's what you do to get a song.
Got it.
And so I guess I only had one electric guitar and one acoustic guitar at the time. And then I went on a little jag where I was into electric guitars. I had a Telecaster and I was happy. That's all I needed is a Telecaster. So that was my electric and I had my Guild acoustic. But then I started to crave different flavors of electric guitar. It's like I want to get humbuckers. I want to get a P90. And at that point, I started interacting on a daily basis with electric guitars.
Interesting.
And I felt the need to, write some songs. So instead of getting the acoustic guitar, I just, plugged in a small amp and the electric guitar and I wrote a bunch of songs that way. And then that became my process. And that's been my primary process. But occasionally, I still write an acoustic guitar. As you know, a couple years ago, I got a Martin D18.
Oh, yeah.
And that kind of turned the tides because I spent a lot of time with that guitar.
Yeah.
It was kind of an emotional moment because that was the point where I took my Guild that was really my songwriting partner for many years. And I said, I'm sending you off. You're going to be somebody else's songwriting partner. I want another guitar for the rest of my life out. So, I've been wanting a Martin D18 for a while. So I found one that spoke to me. Got that and sent the Guild pack in.
Interesting.
And as I understand it, somebody bought it and they're happy with it. So
that's cool.
It's got its new songwriting partner, hopefully. Backing up, I got the Martin, and then I started doing the songwriting process of one-on-one with an acoustic guitar, and I wrote a number of songs. Because usually an instrument for me, there's something about it, maybe it's the way the neck feels, the way it resonates, something that you can find. It's not that it has songs in it, it's like there's songs in you that it draws out.
Got it.
And that Martin drew out like 4 or 5 songs right away. And I think those are the last songs that I wrote.
That's cool, though.
Entirety. It is, but if you need a new guitar to write a song, it's really expensive to be a songwriter. So,
luckily, to that point, maybe you just go to a different piece of gear and focus on a different piece of your gear.
And that's happened. And
that's so cool.
Another thing is playing other people's bands where they take care of the songwriting.
There you go.
And then you're only writing parts. And that's where gear is really, important. Like, if we have a new Riff Broker song, I'll come out here and I might use the Champ and like a fuzz pedal or something like that, just to like dick around with parts. And it's really interesting because you can use an amp and a pedal or a guitar to come up with something, and then you move away from that. Like, I mean, you use a fuzz pedal or something to come up with a riff, but then you say, all right, I've got that riff. It came out of this. I was inspired to create that. And then you strip away the fuzz pedal and you just put it into guitar, or you create something in a capoed position. And then once you get the parts, you take the capo off and it becomes something else. And that's really cool. Yeah. I mean, capos, speaking of like pieces of gear and Muse, they can be great ways to pull out melody that you would never get. It's like that used to be a big songwriting starting point for me, is get the acoustic guitar when I was writing on acoustic and just start moving the capo around and play, cool. your cowboy chord positions up in here and it'll draw something out of you. Yeah. And I'll still do that, and I'll do that with the electric guitar too. So I think gear, there's a fine line that you must walk between letting the gear inspire you and using it, or just like nerding out, right? Just like wanting stuff, looking at stuff and nerding out. And you gotta always remember to like maybe stop and just like look at what you have and just open yourself up to be inspired and just plug it and play. I mean, I try to play as much as I can. Yeah. And you're not always inspired, but sometimes you are. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that was great, because I think it's cool that you kind of had this starting point based on just how you kind of perceived, you wrote songs. This is what you do. You get an acoustic guitar and you sit in front of your 4-track and do it. And then how it evolved. And then basically when you got that D18, how you kind of came back to that and revisited that. And then just realized, you probably realized it all along, but, just focusing on a guitar that you maybe haven't played in a while, or a piece of, or like you say, a pedal. Man, I have that pedal that I haven't touched in ages. Let's go plug it in and see what happens. And I think that's really cool. Yeah, that was a great answer to that question. For me, I had a 4-track back in the day, but for me, I just plugged in and or used pedals and somehow still tried to do the electric. I never really wrote much on acoustic guitar.
Did you have an acoustic guitar other than the one you traded your friend before?
I don't want to go there. All right. I've had them, but not. I haven't had a lot of them, and they didn't play that role with me. Okay. No, so I was just always writing on acoustic. Not acoustic and electric, either not plugged in or plugged in somehow. Back in the day, I had the V and all that other stuff, and that would inspire me to play a certain way, and not necessarily inspire songs, but just it would, based on the neck shape and the width, you know what I mean, or the guitar itself. Exactly. You pick it up and you play a certain way. Oh wow, that's different.
Every
you
pick up this,
you pick up this other guitar and you play a different way, and that's kind of what I dig is. Picking up a guitar I haven't played in a long time, or that I normally don't play, and it's like, oh man, this is kind of forcing me to play differently.
Right, and all your cliches go out the window too. Or you have a different set that here's my Fender set of cliches, and here's my Gibson set of cliches.
Exactly, yeah.
But anything you can do to shake that up, that's what the capo is good for that too. Yeah. Even on electric, I mean, you can get some cool sounding chords.
Oh yeah,
when in the middle of the neck, the capo in the middle of the neck, and just write a riff, and then once you got the riff and you got something to go with it, take the capo off and figure out how to play it without the capo. That's really cool. I mean, I've just found that to be the case, or just like trying to do tasty either licks like you're saying, or riffs on different guitars, right? And try different patterns. Each guitar will kind of force you to play a certain way, and so the cliches I'm so used to playing don't really work right now on this guitar, so I have to find different. I need new cliches. And pedals have been a rediscovery for me. Like that chorus pedal and stuff like that. It kind of makes you think in another way. Have you played that chorus pedal?
No, but it's at gyms, and I need to plug it in and play it because I want to do that.
It's fun to play on those pedals. I brought mine to a rehearsal once, and I think people were like kind of amused and horrified at the same time, because I tried to work it in every song.
It's like, wait, no, I think this will work.
Let's bring the 80s back. But they were inspired to tell me to shut the thing off. So
and I think it's the same way with amps, right, or any of that stuff. And
exactly.
It's hard. We've all heard interviews with people who create stuff, and it's hard. It's work. Nothing falls. Sometimes the occasional thing will fall in your lap, but most of the time it's sitting down in front of a blank page and going, okay, what am I going to do?
Yeah, everything I do sucks.
Yeah. or you like me, you've put like these silly riffs on your phone, and then you listen back and you're like, what the hell was I thinking?
No,
like,
totally.
I've got 100 of these things.
And
but
the other thing is you have to be open to that. There's a mindset you have to be in. I mean, I've written like in a week, I've written like 4 or 5 songs, and all of them ended up being songs that were good enough to play in bands.
That's cool.
And then you go for years where you don't have any ideas. And I think when we're younger, it's easier for us to stay at that spot where we're more open to it, or maybe we just have more time to focus on it. Because look at like the Rolling Stones or something. They wrote this amazing body of work, and they're still doing it. They're out there, but it's never quite. I mean, maybe if you're not hungry anymore, or you're just not I think it's just being in that, not having the distractions that you have, and just being able to be in that spot and open to that sort of like inspiration. I'm a person that writes I never write anything down. I don't, I mentioned having a pencil and a piece of paper.
Right.
I didn't really have a pencil and a piece of paper. Everything that when I write a song starts at the beginning and ends. So when I'm stuck in a song, I just get this far in. And a lot of times my songs will have really powerful first lines and then they'll kind of trail off because it's not the way to do it, though. I mean, I know people who are great songwriters that keep notebooks and they write down ideas.
Well, you do it however it works for you,
right?
Really, I mean.
But I think that's one of the reasons why I don't write as often as I did, because once I get stuck, I'm like, I'm done. I got the first verse and half a chorus, and I'm stuck. So and then it's easier now to move on and do something else.
Yeah.
But back then I would have stuck with it. I just kept pushing and pushing, but.
That's an interesting point, and I always think the same thing. Like these bands have a lifespan or a window where they create all this great shit, and then the later stuff they do is like, maybe you're missing the fire or whatever, or the focus. But I think on our topic here today, they've
already bought all the gear in the world.
Well, so, but I mean,
there's nothing to inspire them.
Well, or maybe it's the fact that they need to sit down more with their gear and go, you know what, I'm going to play that Strat I bought in wherever back 2 tours ago or whatever it was, and just like guys like you and me, we have a few guitars, and it's like, maybe there's 1 or 2 guitars we haven't really looked at in a few months or a year or whatever, and it's so cool to bring something like that out and play it and go, oh man, I remember this thing, and then all of a sudden it might inspire you to like write some new songs or play a different way and so that's kind of the fun of and you don't have to have a large collection of gear. You can have a few pedals, maybe an amp or a couple amps, and maybe a couple guitars, and you're like, okay, cool. Man, I usually play the hell out of this Strat. I'm going to put it away and play this other guitar. Just force yourself to play gear that you don't normally play, or play your friend's gear, like you and I swap gear all the time, and it's like, it's kind of interesting to sit with somebody else's guitar or whatever and go, wow, okay, this is what he plays all the time. How does this work? And I think that's pretty cool.
Totally. And, I'm such a fan of the classic guitars, to have available, like I want the classic Strat sound right now. I want this classic Tele sound or the classic Gibson humbucker sound. It's good to be able to have those.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to think of what electric, if I had to come up with, I guess it's not that important for writing parts for like a rock band. I would probably, a lot of times I'll use like a Gibson, either the Les Paul Standard or the Les Paul. Sometimes I'll use like a distortion, like a MXR Distortion Plus or something like that in a small amp, and just get a really kind of like 70s distorto sound and make riffs like that. Or a lot of times it doesn't matter. It's kind of like, I'm kind of like you. I'll just sit at the table with the songs on MP3 and whatever guitar I have handy, come up with parts. But
yeah, but and what you were talking about earlier, it's like whatever works for you. I mean, I'm all over the map. Like I've got licks all over. Like if you looked at inside my head, it's probably like Einstein's office, that picture you've seen where everything's all over the place, or some artist's loft that's full of crap on the floor and stuff. And so it's really hard to be. I'm not I envy people who like are disciplined or prolific at songwriting, because it's
Right.
like, for me, it's so hard. Like my goal was to write 10 songs that I didn't hate. I've got one song that is okay. And it's been, the span of how many years now. But what I have noticed, though, is that you and I, since you and I have really been getting into gear, you and I kind of got into acoustic bluegrass for a time, mandolins. That's another thing. Mandolin for me was kind of a revelation. I'd never played mandolin until you and I said, let's get mandolins and play bluegrass. And it's strung like a violin, right? And I've never played an instrument like that before. And it was super fun to learn those chord shapes and how to get some kind of decent sound out of the damn thing.
Right.
And so that was inspirational, right?
I got a couple songs out that mandolin, that little mandolin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of fun too, because you can still apply that inspiration to your other stuff, your guitars and everything else.
Seeing how like you come up with different things on the mandolin, because you go, even if you're trying to go to your go-to cliches on that, with the sounds or like kind of the notes you put together.
Yep.
They're in a different spot, so you take them back to the guitar and you're like, oh, this is not, it broke you out of that guitar, slump of playing those things that you assume are the same. They're different once you bring them back to guitar. And I've done a few things like that too, is come up with really cool guitar parts that I never would have come up with because they came from the mandolin first.
Cool. Yeah.
And then you transpose them back to the guitar.
Yeah. And I thought that was really kind of a cool shot in the arm for me, just for guitar, was and acoustic guitar too. When we started getting into bluegrass, you and I, because I have that nice acoustic that I don't play all that often. I played it a heck of a lot more once you and I were trying to figure out all these bluegrass tunes.
We're figuring out that we'll never be bluegrass players.
Yeah. Well, that's a valuable thing to learn. You got to learn your boundaries.
My whole approach to that is like, I love bluegrass music, but I don't have enough of my life left to probably get as good as the people that I admire that play that.
Right.
All that I wanted to do is play in that style and just kind of steal stuff from that genre and put them in my stupid rock genre.
That's cool.
So. And that's all I'm ever doing is like a country. I really love country music, and I was in a band that was very country influenced. I was a hack. I didn't play with my fingers, but I did steal enough of that stuff. And I just want to get, before I leave this earth, I want to have some sort of style that I made mine by stealing from all these people. So I'm not trying to be a great bluegrass player or a great country player or a great rock player, but if you steal enough of these things and make some sort of style out of it, that's my goal.
Yeah.
It's something that's mine.
That's cool.
From stealing from enough people that nobody notices.
No, but that's a great goal, and kind of that's similar to me too. I mean, I would love to kind of have a style where people heard me play and go, oh yeah, I think that's Hines playing, or but that's really difficult.
It's very Heinesian.
Very Heinesian.
There.
But that's kind of what it did for me too. And I feel the same way. It's like, because I've tried to get into classical and jazz and all this stuff, but I'm like, okay. And I've played a long time. I've gone down a certain road of basically blues rock hackery, And so you're right. To dedicate myself to play the way I would want to play would just take too long. It's hard enough for me to stay focused on my silly rock licks that I do and stuff like that. But I do. But you're right. But visiting those different genres, like visiting bluegrass and these other things, and bringing it back to what you do, or trying to integrate it into what you do, is really fun and cool.
Yep, I have things that I play now in the bands that I'm in now that has come from that little foray into bluegrass. I'm like, oh, this is cool. This is something I didn't have before. Toink, I'm stealing that. And then it ends up in one of these other things. So that's what you do. You steal enough, and you try to get something that is your own out of it.
Yeah, and like that's what I liked about a lot of bluegrass playing, is it's very lyrical and it's very melodic. Oh, a lot of it is anyway, because it's mimicking like the vocal line and all this other stuff. And I love to bring that into my playing, because that's the stuff I've really come to love and enjoy, is like guitar stuff that really just serves the song, right? It's
exactly.
Like, and even if you're going to do a solo or something like that, make it melodic or make it lyrical. Don't just wank through a blues. I mean, that's fine to do, but I really like to try to get some kind of melody happening or lyrical thing happening that pleases me and serves the song. You know what I mean? And that gives me pleasure. And again, that's all inspired from, playing bluegrass or playing the mandolin or playing these or being aware of these other influences from these pieces of gear and genres of music, sure. But that hopefully, like you say, you can steal and put them into your own style and
And that's going back to the bluegrass thing. That's kind of like very much related to gear because, I mean, though I've been into like bluegrass music forever. You know, getting that Martin guitar, it's such like a guitar you would associate with bluegrass. That kind of just steered me a little bit more deeper into that. And, you know, the sound is definitely the mid-rangey sound of that instrument, you know, and the force with which it will project.
Oh, yeah.
It definitely steers you. It draws that out of you. Like anything you like in there, now suddenly you have a vehicle to express things in that way. So it's definitely related to gear.
Yeah.
I mean, by allowing yourself to be inspired by that.
Yeah, and that's a great point because that guitar is iconic for being a great bluegrass guitar or just a great acoustic guitar in general. You know, it's the big body dreadnought that everybody associates with these great guitar sounds from rock to country, you know? And, I find that inspiring too. Like that J180 I have is similar in that you strum that thing and it's like, oh yeah, that's the way I think it should sound because it sounds like these other recordings I associate.
That's the classic Gibson.
And
it's slightly tubby, but, you know, really musical Gibson sound. Yeah. That's the classic. I mean, the classic would be the J50 or the J, but that's it's in the ball. It's a bigger body, right?
Yeah,
it's like a jumbo.
It's smaller than a 200, but it's
right. No, like it's voiced a lot like that. I love every. I kind of shocked myself that I ended up going for a Martin. Yeah. Because I've always been a Gibson flat top lover, you know, and I've always thought, you know, when I get a really good guitar, I'm going to get a Gibson. I was thinking like a J200 or a J45 or something like that. And I just, over a course of maybe a year or two, my head steered towards the Martin. And then looking between the D18 and the D28, the D18 kind of like stuck, it kind of hooked me a little bit, even though the D28 is like, if you sit down and play a really good D28 and you sit down and play a really good D18, 99% of the people are going to take the D28 because it's so instantly gratifying. It's just this immense sound.
Yeah.
But it doesn't for recording and for like doing a lot of single note stuff, it doesn't project the same way. It doesn't project the same mid-range. Yeah. As the other one, and that's what I ended up going for.
Oh yeah,
the extra mid-range, and that's why my Guild was really good at it. It was a great recording guitar. It was on a lot of recordings.
It did sound good.
It was all mahogany, and I knew when I was playing a part on that guitar exactly how it would sound coming out of the record because I knew where it sat. That's how well I knew that, and I was looking for another guitar that I could bond with and would have that same sort of mid-range content that
what had. Was it that do you think that steered you from thinking, oh, I want a Gibson acoustic to wanting a Martin?
I really don't know. I don't know. I mean, I read some book and it was about a songwriter and I kind of got back I want to go back to writing songs on acoustic guitar, and I dug out my Guild and I played it, and it was getting a little long in the tooth. I think it was about where it's starting to look like it needed a neck reset. And I'm like, you know, I get several more years out of this, but it's going to need a reset at some point. And I don't know if I want to put that kind of money into this guitar. So I started going to guitar shops and playing guitars. And I think the most research I've ever done on a guitar was for the D28.
Dang.
And I found that one. It's not even an old one. It's from the 90s. But
maybe it was just going out and playing them and you're like, God, these Martins are freaking cool.
And I played some Gibsons. Yeah. I played just about everything I could. And the Gibsons... I played some new Gibsons, and there was one that sounded really good, but the Gibsons suffered from something all of them did, was they felt really rough, and like the fret edges were kind of rough. But there was one, and I think it was a J30 maybe. It was like a blonde instrument. It sounded really good, but I would have to finish the fret ends because they didn't.
Yeah.
But so no, and there were a few up the street in a guitar shop, and there was a 70s D18 that I looked at first, and I thought I wanted, and then I came back and they had a 90s, and I side-by-sided them, and the 90s won.
That's cool. It's a cool guitar. It sounds amazing. And I think that's fascinating because I'm trying to think of what I was lusting for when I was lusting for an acoustic guitar. I think it was a Gibson, you know, but But when we were growing up, Takamine made those knockoff Gibsons, or not Gibsons, but Martins. Remember those?
No, totally.
That were amazing guitars.
Like they were.
Yeah, I mean, they were great guitars. I always wanted one of those, like back when I was a kid, because they were
attainable.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I mean, you were never going to get a Martin as a kid.
Yeah, but they were really cool guitars. Yeah, they were, probably a lawsuit Martin for the time.
They were, yeah. Yamaha made some really nice sounding flat tops from them too. I had a Sigma for a while. Was the first.
Yeah.
It took me forever to get a decent acoustic guitar. I don't know what it was when it dawned on me. It's like, look, if I'm going to write songs and I need to be inspired.
Yeah.
I need something that sounds good. So I suffered with like shitty $200 acoustic guitars forever.
Yeah.
And then I had a Sigma, which was okay. I think it was the Korean made one. It was a knockoff of a D18, but I didn't miss that guitar. The Guild was the first really good American flat top that I had.
Cool.
If you look around this room right now, you can see it strewn about amps and effects pedals. And when I might come out here someday, and I might just like grab one of these little amps, and I just don't want to plug in a noodle. I'll just go to this cupboard or take some of those pedals and just try to make up.
That's what's cool.
And you just look for stuff.
Yeah, you do that all the time, because I'll call you or something, and you go, yeah, dude, I plugged in this. I put together this weird little pedal board of these pedals, and it's really cool. This old phaser I picked, it's like, oh, cool. It's like I
plugged in every phaser I've had, and put
so
a big
I was up a week straight.
Yeah, no, I haven't written a song in 6 months, but I've got all these phasers hooked up. Yeah, I'm changing the caps in them.
But I think that's cool, and I try to do that. I try to go in and grab a guitar that I haven't played in a while, or pick up something, or get with my gear that I haven't played with in a while, and do it and play something, and it is inspiring. It's never disappointing, really. Sometimes my playing is disappointing, and I'll go, shit, I'll turn it off. And
everybody goes through that, I'm sure.
But the kind of the act of it is kind of cool, because again, like, it's just rediscovering a piece of gear that you really haven't spent a lot of time with in a while, right? And it's kind of like relearning it or getting it new again. It's like, oh man, I remember this pedal or this guitar, so cool. Like anyway. Or I really dig swapping gear too. Like you and I do that sometimes, where, exactly like I mentioned that before, but I think that's super cool. Like if you do have friends and they're willing to swap gear with you, that's a great way to if you're thinking about buying something that person has, try it out. Or B, just get inspired by playing your friend's Les Paul or their Martin or whatever it is that you don't have, or pedal that you don't have. And I think that's really inspirational.
Yeah. Recording, if there's usually seems to be people are really into recording, and there's people who aren't into it at all, and there's some people in between that kind of maybe like the idea of recording but don't like dealing with the nerdy techie stuff.
Right.
Where technology is right now, for very little technical knowledge, you can set yourself up with some sort of like computer-based recording, and that's great. I mean, we're really spoiled now with what we can do with digital recording. Yeah. I mean, and that's kind of like a double-edged sword, because as soon as you give yourself access to these tools, there's all this stuff. There's always something you need more or better. But I've just managed to just draw a line and come up with a digital system that is as close to like analog recording as possible. I mean, I use the software as like a tape deck. I do have editing capabilities. I got it like an outboard compressor that's cheap but sounds good, and a couple of good preamps, and then just stop there.
Yeah.
I have like a reverb plugin that I like. I don't need to try 500. And if you can keep yourself like nailed down to some simple system, there's a lot of inspiration. It's like, this portal to like getting your inspirations documented.
Oh yeah.
And the software itself can either inspire or drag you down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And if you let yourself just like use it as a tape machine, I love that. When I'm in that mode and I've got some material that I come up with, the next step is like painting a picture with it, like getting all the sounds and arranging it. And that's another aspect where gear can come in and either inspire you or totally ruin you. But
that's a great point. And for very little money now, you can have a lot of options and create a recording that's pretty damn good.
Right.
I mean, it's pretty silly now. And
it's certainly listenable,
totally.
Like, in the days of the 4 tracks, that was really hard. I mean, anybody who wants to go back to that analog cassette 4-tracking is. Kind of
you can make sophisticated recordings with minimal, like GarageBand. You can make a sophisticated recording, and even with your setup, you kind of claim that these just sound like demos. But I've heard you record stuff that sounds in my opinion, that you could release. I mean, maybe it was mastered or something, but it sounds great anyway.
Well, thank you.
I mean, yeah, but even if you don't want to document it that way, just get inspired by doing what we said. Playing stuff you haven't played in a while, or play one of your friends' pieces of gear, or go to a guitar shop and annoy the hell out of them for 2 hours playing everything in the store. So, what I would say is, if you're a musician or an artist of some kind, try to mix it up. That's the bottom line, right? So if you're, if for instance, Chris and I play guitar, we have our favorite guitars, we play a lot, put it down, pick up another one, or pick up a mandolin or a ukulele or whatever. Or, if you have the luxury of playing a couple different amps that you own, play the different amp, but mix it up.
Stick a capo on it and get inspired, because just doing those things can inspire you in so many different ways. And it's really cool and fun. I agree. That's good. Okay, cool. Well, again, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We have a website, chrisandricktalkguitars.com. Go there and like us. And we really appreciate you guys listening to the podcast. We enjoy it. We love it. Chris, anything for the people out there? No, I think you covered it all. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. All right. Bye. See ya. Spanish